Hello, friends. Thank you so much for being here for the Magic Israel podcast. I'm Shannon. I'm your host. I'm a psychic medium and a lover of all things metaphysical and spiritual. And this is the podcast where we talk about spiritual awakenings, near death experiences, out of body experiences, and spiritual journeys, and mostly focus on the insights that come from these profound experiences. And I'm very excited to be here today with Allison Holley. Allison is an author of 2.5 books. She is an Andromedan starseed channel and awakening guide. Her life purpose and her life purpose and greatest joy is to be of service through shining her light and being a grounded channel of unconditional love. There's nothing better. So thank you, Allison, so much for being here. I'm so happy to meet you.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you. It's funny, I told you just before we started recording that I've been on a little bit of a hiatus. So hearing my own bio read back to me is this nice reminder. That is a great purpose. It
It
feels
is a great
good to
purpose.
hear.
And I think it's important what you said in that bio, because a lot of us think, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? And especially in our culture, there's a lot of emphasis on what you do for a living, what you do to make money. And
Mm,
really, we have to remind ourselves that you're already living your purpose simply by
mm,
existing and being a soul and shining your unique light and sharing love with other people. And that's really, if you never do a single thing, you're doing that.
It's funny, we have a lot in common. I haven't heard I haven't heard a lot of other people express life purpose that way as well. That's definitely what I share with people. It's just your frequency. Your existence, the fact that you incarnated is so powerful. It's so huge, especially cosmically when we talk of all of these multidimensional galactic beings incarnating as a human is incredibly powerful and it's a real big deal. So the fact that we've even just done that, even if we did it just for a moment and even if we were to do nothing else, it's so powerful, it's so big. So yes, we're already doing it. Thank you for putting it that way.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. I want to hear so many things about you. First, I'm just going to let the listeners in on the fact that this is really exciting for me because Allison and I have such a similar spiritual awakening story. And it gives me chills because we were saying that we haven't met anyone else that's been through the same. Obviously, circumstances are different, life experiences are different, but the way that I heard her explain her story was it's my story. And so, first of all, just can you just tell us about you and your background as a human being on this earth, your childhood, whatever feels relevant to your whole spiritual journey. Did you grow up around spirituality? Did you not? What did you perceive the world to be?
Mm. It's interesting because a lot of memories are sort of formed retrospectively,
Yeah.
which sounds obvious, but we think of memories as like something core that's a static thing and I'm going to go retrieve it because that's the way that it was. But my memories are formulated based on who I know myself to be now and what I know about, the all that is and the human experience in general. So I didn't necessarily see it this way when I was experiencing it, but retrospectively, I can look back and say, oh, okay, I get it. I had this sort of life experience. So I was born with some pretty intense health issues. Um, I feel emotional in your presence. I feel like there's just such a resonance. So
I do too.
feeling that. So I was born with a lot of health issues. I was, in and out of the hospital for a lot of my youth. Retrospectively, I understand that it's because this is my first time here and it was a big shock to my system to incarnate into such a dense experience. It felt violent to me. I've gone back in a lot of different channeling experiences and recognize that life as a human felt very violent. Just the act of existing felt intense. I also had, a home base that had a lot of violence going on, and there was violent situations happening. So my body responded to that with really intense uh, asthma and skin issues, to the point of hospitalization really throughout my life. And it has some of the clarity that I've received about that through channeling, recently in the past 12 years or so, once I started channeling, is that the pain that I experienced was important for me to learn how to ground, how to exist. My guides told me essentially, if you didn't have that pain, you would be so full of joy that you would just kind of float off into the ethers. You wouldn't believe in this human experience. So there was a lot of pain built in. Um, I did grow up religious. I actually was part of the Mormon faith. And so that was also really interesting. My experience with it was really good, with a few caveats, right? There was a lot of female repression and sexual repression and things like that. But in terms of, my family was so loving, is still so loving. Um, and, of course, there was a lot to be worked out when I was young. There was those violent situations, but overall, every person in my family has been driven towards self-development, and so there's just a lot of beauty in my family, and there's always been a lot of love. But I had kind of that mixture of a lot of religious informing and also, a lot of health issues. So the world felt kind of like a scary place. The training in religion tends to be there's a lot of evil out there and we've got to be perfect and all of that. So yeah, there was a lot of fear in my body. There was a lot of anger in my body. And um, my awakening started, let's see, I was 33 when my awakening started. And do you want me to go into that
You
experience?
can, yeah. That's perfect
Okay.
segue. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So by the time I reached into my 30s, I was running a business and it was a fitness studio. So I was talking a lot. I was, teaching like 6 days a week. It was probably way more than I needed to be doing. But I lost my voice for 6 months. And at the same time, I threw my neck out. And at the same time as that, there was something else going on right here in the throat area. And I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was some sort of skin allergy because that was also pretty typical at the time. Um, there was a lot going on health wise. And so my voice was in and out for about 6 months. And I finally decided I really need to do something about this. So I went to a practitioner who was a holistic practitioner. She, worked with energy. She did energetic clearings, and she was also a naturopath. So I went to her, and she had this chart in her office that she had you fill out, and it was sort of like a human body, and you would color in the areas where you were having issues, and then describe what they were. And she looked at my chart when I was done filling it out and she said, there's a lot going on right here. Potentially, she kind of taught me about the chakras and she said, the throat. And I'd heard of this before, but she said, the throat is around speaking your truth. And she kept it pretty simple for me. She said, I think you need to speak your truth. So that led me into what I thought was speaking my truth, which was really the gateway to understanding my truth. And my truth that I thought was I went home and I ended the relationship that I was in. I said, this needs to be done. Um, from there, it created this spiral effect of my whole life crashing down and my awakening began. And the awakening experience for me was essentially my crown just blasted open, my third eye just blasted open. I started having visions. And when I tell people about it, I like to compare it to, I mean, I was completely sober. I didn't work with plant medicines. Even previous to my awakening, I didn't really even drink much. It was kind of, um, it was a sober experience, but it felt like I was on psychedelics for several months. Just the act of moving through life, I was starting to really knock down those walls between the dimensions, and I started seeing multidimensionally in my waking life, and it was really intense. And that's also the time when I started channeling. So that process started spontaneously for me, and it was really powerful. So yeah, I kind of gave the whole background into present day life,
That's
but
perfect. That's perfect because then I want to kind of separate some things. Uh, I am so interested to hear about that. Well, first, just because some people may not know my story, and I'll make it brief, which I normally don't want to make it all about me, but it's going to tie in and it'll make our conversation it'll make sense to the listener. So, um, long story short, when I was a kid, I had a large birthmark on my face. And so, I stopped talking because kids were not making fun. They were like 2 years old, 3 years old. People were staring and pointing. All the attention I was getting was negative. So I became elective mute because it was my way of disappearing so that I thought nobody could see me. I didn't want to be seen because my face was a source of shame. So cut to high school when I open up and I start singing in a band and I'm cheerleading and I'm acting and I'm finding my voice. And then college and I'm in a band and I'm singing and I become very outgoing. And then I go on to become a voice actor. Well, similar to you, it took me 20 years of financial struggle, to finally make it in voiceover. So by the time I actually really started to make money at it, working like 10 jobs, at all times, I finally hit it. And I'm like, I'm making six figures. I'm doing what I love. I'm in a relationship. It's not the relationship is problematic. He's a good person. There are a lot of problems in the relationship. And what I do, like I did when I was a kid, I shut down. I don't speak up when I'm angry. I have trouble with conflict. I hold a lot inside. I get steamrolled. Every time I bring up an issue, it's it becomes the script. The script is flipped. Um, and then, apologized. But there was a lot of like, well, you don't know because you don't know what's normal and you don't. So, anyway, so I developed muscle tension dysphonia and I was a voice actor and suddenly couldn't speak. So my whole throat closed up. Uh, and it turns out it's a mind body connection syndrome. Started with acid reflux, where I had vocal cord fluttering because of the reflux. And then all the air was going through my vocal cords too fast. So they weren't closing. Because of that, I had to strain to talk. And the strain becomes new neural pathways. And muscle tension dysphonia is common in fitness instructors, teachers, heavy voice users, singers. Shania Twain had it, although hers was due to Lyme disease, but also being a voice user. One of the Backstreet Boys had it. And so I went from 2 years of thriving in using my voice and working full time to total shutdown. You can no longer work in voiceover. Then the pandemic hits. So here I am. Fortunately, my partner was doing pretty well, so he was helping me. But my vocal coach said, these exercises aren't working because you're so upset. Like, I mean, well, and they're not going to work overnight because we have to retrain your nervous system. She said, I want you to read The Power of Now. I want you to
Wow.
do meditation. I want you to do yoga. So I just said, okay. I started taking mediumship classes. I started diving into spirituality. I was so depressed. I didn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And I just was like, why is this happening to me? I finally made it. I worked my whole life for this, and now I can't have it anymore, is, what I felt. And ultimately, that was when I had my own spiritual awakening and started to study mediumship and start I didn't have the dramatic experiences that you did, but suddenly I became aware that I can talk to dead people.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole unfolding from there, but I would love to know with yours, can you describe when that first started happening? What did you think was happening? Did you
Mm,
understand what was happening? Was it exhilarating? Was it scary? And
mm,
if you can remember, like the first time it started to happen,
mm,
what was your perception of what was happening?
mm. Honestly, it felt more normal than anything that I had previously experienced in life, in human life. I was like, oh, this is what I've always known is going on, but now I see it. Now I feel it. Now I know it. Because it very much was clairvoyant for me. It was very visionary. All of my the things that came online were, for example, I'd always sort of felt this interesting energy, but now I literally saw it. And it was in a different dimensional space, but it was clear. And I felt easy. I actually felt easier about it, about life in general. Now, it totally took my life apart. Everything became disassembled because I couldn't function that way in my old life. So, I sold the studio, and that, sounds way cleaner than the way that it really happened. It
Yeah.
was a mess. My relationship ended. I was part of a performance troupe and really a part of the community because of my business. And suddenly I was acting like a crazy person, according to a lot of other people. Um, Surprise selling my business, and my students were up, there was a lot of upheaval, so there was everything shifted in my physical reality and in my human experience. And internally, and all of the visionary things that were happening, all of the awakening things that were happening felt so good and so much more normal to me than anything else. I was like, finally, this is what reality is supposed to feel like, you know? Um, yeah, so that was interesting. But it took a very long time to integrate. So it took a full year. Once I began my awakening, I sold my studio and I sat still. I went from teaching and working out, 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, to I literally meditated for a year. There are people that go to these, meditation retreats. I did that for a whole year. I couldn't function in reality. Um, it was a lot of breaking down, a lot of reforming what my life experience was. I met my partner and got married within a year of that. It was and we're no longer together, but it was very divinely orchestrated. And so essentially, I went from one life to a completely different life. And then after that year of meditation, I was still meditating and channeling regularly. And it took about 3 years before I really knew how to like have work and income. And I mean, it was a huge adjustment in my life. But yeah, like I said, it felt really good. Felt really
Yeah. And let's talk about channeling. Some people may not know exactly, well, everyone has a different way of channeling, but
absolutely
often mediumship is referred to as channeling, but I don't channel the way that you channel. So
right.
what I call myself a spirit translator,
Mm,
because that feels the most right to me is I'm just the mail person delivering the mail. So they're just
I love
putting
it.
it in my hand and I'm going, here's what
Oh.
there's here's the message. Um, how did you discover well, I guess I would say, how do you define channeling and how did you personally discover channeling? Did it come to you? Did you just try it one day and say, I'm just going to try doing this? And I'm so curious about channeling in general because I've never done it myself and I want to know what that experience is for you.
Well, I love this. I love this question because the way that I see channeling, I feel is very, very important to share with people. It's empowering and it's important for the way that we're awakening and shifting right now globally. Um, Channeling is actually something, in the way that I see it, that all of us do all of the time, and that there's just different sort of dimensional spaces that we can open to. So, I am channeling right now in order to exist as a human. In order to be a human, my soul is channeling into this layer of reality and, combining with physical matter, which is energy, in order to create a human experience for myself. So we're all doing that. In the moment that we incarnate, we are channeling our soul essence into this layer of reality. When we start to consciously channel, we open our awareness up to different dimensional spaces. So it's sort of like we exist in a multi-dimensional layer cake, is the way that I like to put it. And it's far less linear than this. It's hard to describe multiple dimensions because we think in such a linear way. But essentially, we've got, I like to describe it in spheres. It's closer to the truth. And so we exist in this inner sphere of 3D awareness. And then beyond that, we've got the astral planes. And beyond that, we've got the what's often known as the quantum realms or the realms of heaven. Beyond that, we've got so much more beyond that, beyond that, beyond that. So, as a channel, I am learning to navigate multidimensionally with my consciousness and receive information in the form of, words, energy, whatever, pictures, um, teachings. And I'm learning to translate that into English to share with other people. Because of my purpose, which is, my divine template, my energetic frequency, who I am, um, I channel in a specific way with a specific purpose. So the way that I channel is really bringing through collective teachings, specifically for this awakening time. So I go into collective energy readings. I see sort of I can see the divine template of people. So if I do like a one-on-one reading, I'm able to sort of see, how do you describe the divine template? It's interesting. I'm going to need a whole new set of, a whole new language for for some of this in order to really translate it. But when I see people's divine template, it's your energetic frequency as it moves through the landscape of time and space that we experience. And so that is, what you're here for, what your divine mission is, per, potentially, past lives. But of course, the past, and it's all concurrent. We have other lives that, other incarnations that are existing simultaneously within other dimensional spaces. So I'm picking up on a lot of that kind of far out there in the layer cake information, and bringing it into what's applicable for this human experience in order for each of us to really ascend and meet ourselves in that higher form.
Yeah, that's no, it's
Period.
hard. It's hard to put into words, but I completely understand. It's the same thing I do in the sense that we are dead people aren't really dead. They're still with us, obviously not in the same form, and that's heartbreaking.
Mm,
But I'm not, I'm basically accessing what's already there.
yeah,
So they're they're in another dimension and because they're in a different vibration,
yeah,
but technically they're still with us in the same, we're all in that dimension already. So all I'm doing is tuning into a different radio station.
I love that.
So it's, yeah, it's drawing awareness, as Suzanne Giesman says, she's one of my favorite mediums. She calls it a shift. All she's doing her whole prep is just, now I'm here, and she says shift. And
I
it's
love
shifting
that.
our awareness from here, wherever here is,
Mhm.
to there, wherever there is.
Yeah.
And it's like just shifting and becoming aware. So, for example, when I was on um, the podcast that brought us together,
Yes.
which is it was Allie and Justin, and please remind me of the name. Podcast.
Life,
L- Con-
living life
Living
consciously.
life consciously. It hasn't
I
my
think.
episode hasn't come out yet. So good job, thank you. They had me on the show, and it's coming out soon. And I did this exercise with them. And I said, all right, right now I'm going to have you shift. I'm just going to have, you're going to do mediumship right this minute. So
Love
I
that.
said, all we're going to do is take your awareness into another space. And I said, so right now we're intending to connect with the other side. I said, what's the first image that comes to your mind? And
Mm.
Allie said, a yellow rubber ducky. I said, you just performed mediumship because that is my sign from one of my best friends on the other side is a yellow rubber ducky.
Wow.
And so I said, that's you just did it. You just did it. And they
Wow.
were just blown away. All I did was just tune in. What's in the back of your mind right now? You know, it's like you're sitting here and okay, first thing that comes into my mind, a dozen eggs. Like, anything. And that might not be the spirit message, but that's how it works to a degree.
We tend to, I love that. I love that experience, by the way. And we tend to really separate this idea of, like we make it so special that it's inaccessible. Like, oh, I've got to really, something, it's got to already be built into me. It's not, we think of channeling as like this really separate thing and something that takes years, or maybe it's only divinely inspired by a few people and it's so inaccessible, but really it is just that. It's sort of this just this breath into the next space. So I love that.
Yeah, so when you're channeling,
Hmm.
I I think one of the biggest things, and I have the word trust on my wrist because as a medium, that's I have to remind myself that it's the biggest leap of faith you'll ever take is I'm about to sit in front of someone and tell them
Hmm.
what spirit is telling me. And my human ego gets in the way in terms of going, what if I'm wrong? What if
Mm.
I don't do a good job? I want to make them happy. What if I don't perform well? What if, and I always ask for that to be removed, for my ego to be removed. This isn't about me. I trust that you'll use me and I trust that you will prompt me to say what needs to be said. And
Hmm.
then I have to just kind of jump. And it feels scary because the only way I know I'm not making it up is that they're telling me, yes, that is true.
Right.
So when you're channeling, does anything happen to you? Like Suzanne Giesman also is a channel. And
Hmm.
she actually, her face starts to twitch. She gets physical
Hmm.
sensations where she literally feels like I don't want to put words in her mouth, but there is a thing where her mouth starts to twitch and then she starts to channel information. And other channelers say sometimes they don't even remember what they said. I've tried it just alone I'm like, I feel like I'm just whipping stuff out of nowhere. So how do you, Allison,
Huh.
know when you're channeling and what you're channeling and who you're channeling?
Mm.
If you channel other beings, I guess I should say.
Yes, yes. So, okay, a couple things. A lot of times when I go into a channeling space, and a lot of people want to know, who am I channeling? Who am I accessing? And as part of that definition that I gave before, where it's sort of more opened up, there are times when I communicate with other beings or groups of beings or, councils, divine councils, and things like that. Um, a lot of the time, and I would say most of the time, although I'm hearing right now, like you can't say most of the time because nothing's static like that. A lot of times I am channeling higher dimensional spaces of myself. So I'm just looking in a new dimensional space, but it's still me. So what a couple things that happen. Um, Very frequently, I don't necessarily fully forget what I've said, but sometimes I'm so present that yes, I don't remember the word that just came through previously, or even somebody, if it's a one-on-one session, somebody will ask a question and I'll just start going. bringing the information through, and then I'll say, I have no idea what you actually asked. So did that come through? So that's very frequent. One of my favorite things that happens is that I become filled with ecstasy. So I also have like I call it ecstatic body movements that come through my body where it's really sort of like if you're laying on water and it's moving your body, but it's moving through my nervous system. So it's very pleasurable. A lot of times, it honestly looks orgasmic and feels orgasmic. So that happens because tapping into higher frequency states, it is an incredibly ecstatic experience for me. And generally speaking, divine love and love in those higher frequency states is ecstatic. And so I become filled with ecstasy. There are times when, and I want to say that this is not something unique to me. I also want to say, I teach channeling, and these experiences, especially this next one that I'm going to share, it's universal. So the way that we experience the energy moving through us is unique, but universally, when we tap into higher frequency states, we actually become illuminated. We actually start to glow. The aura change is perceptible. Um, and a lot of times, the frequencies moving through people. So for me, sometimes it's so much joy and so much love that I start crying because it's overwhelming. And I'm also a very emotional person. I just really packed all of the emotions into this human experience for myself, again, so that I would really be part of the human experience. So most of the time, a lot of the time, it's just overwhelming to the point of it makes me cry with joy. I mean, it's ecstasy. So predominantly that's the experience that I have is that really intense ecstasy.
And how do you get there? How do you prepare to channel, or does it happen organically? Obviously, when you have clients, you need to do it on command. And
Yeah.
so what's your process for making that connection?
Um, it has developed over the years. So I'll start with how it started. When I first started channeling, the first two times were completely spontaneous. I was driving in my car, and all of a sudden, I felt like a pressure on the top of my head. And I compare it to when you have to go to the bathroom. It's like that pressure that's like, now. And I knew it was a message coming through. It just felt like liquid light coming through. And whew, so good. So I pulled over both times. I called my mom and brought through these messages. After that, I started consciously practicing. And I would sit in meditation sometimes for an hour, just listening so intensely. Like, okay, I would ask a question, and I just listen, and I'd have to trust, like you
Yeah.
said. So maybe one word would come through at first. The first question that I consciously asked was, "Where am I from?" And I heard Andromeda, and I had no idea that that was a starseed nation, that this was a place. I thought that could be something from a comic book. I have no idea. So I tabled it and I kept asking questions, and I looked it up on Google later, and it was confirmed. So that's kind of how it started. It slowly progressed to I would and at the beginning I would have to sit in absolute silence. Like I remember when I got married, my husband would breathe and I'd be like, "You need to stop. I need to listen." So everything would throw me off. And then, I mean, I practiced and went into this space every day. It was so pleasurable. I was just hungry for it. I was accessing what felt real for the first time in my life. And so I was just doing this constantly. I mean, every day, sometimes multiple times a day, I was sitting in meditation and consciously listening and asking questions and examining what I would receive. Over the years, that became um, where full sentences would come through, and I wouldn't know what the next sentence was until I delivered each one. So I was really just
Wow.
listening and delivering word by word. That then progressed to um, it started coming faster. And it started becoming so fast that, when I first started doing this consciously, my husband and I would sit and we'd actually like write down, we'd be able to take written notes of what was coming through. But there came a point where we couldn't write fast enough. So then we would record it and transcribe it later. And I mean, I've been doing this consciously with awareness since 2012. That's when it opened for me. So progressively, then it started coming through and it stopped being word for word. I started more describing the impressions that I was receiving, almost as if I was walking into a room and describing the room. What multidimensional space am I in? What information am I being given? And I was less attached to the word for word, and I was more able to describe the fullness of the experience. I'd be able to kind of then have conversations with beings if I was connecting with a being. It would be um, more like playful
Mhm.
because it was like a conversation that we would have. I would be laughing or crying, more open like that. Where I am now with it is I can go into a channeled state with my eyes open. It is just kind of like what you
Switch.
described. It's just that shift. I don't focus, and then I bring myself into a general focus and I receive and I trust it. And that whole process, I mean, I love the tattoo that you have. It's so true. That whole process was, I'm receiving something, we're just going to see if it checks. I'd get psychic information and then, it would happen in a couple weeks and I'd be like, "Okay, I can trust that." I'd get psychic information and it wouldn't happen. There were so many learning curves. By the way, when we receive psychic information, it doesn't happen. It's because we have choice points. So
Right.
there's been years and years and years of learning what this experience is like, and it has really evolved. It's now at the point where I'm starting to practice things like telekinesis, which is, you know, we've got lots of different multidimensional skills. And so when we go into those realms and start to sort of exist there and live there and really get familiar with it, it not only comes with channeling, but several other things come with it. Just like being a human, right? So we
Yeah.
get all of these skills being a human, and when we start to access those other realms, many things come with it. So channeling has opened up into many other skills that I'm currently exploring. Um, but yeah, it's something that if I want to go really deep, sometimes if I'm super in my mind and I'm really in the human experience, I still have to sit still and really listen. Other times I'm walking through my life and I'm just a breath away from that channeled space and I can see visions as I'm walking. So it's practice learning how to navigate many dimensions at once.
Thank you for that. I have two questions that are kind of one question. I feel like it's sort of like you're going into the state, and then are these beings like the same guy, or is it like these hitchhikers that are like, oh, while you're open, or if it's like you're talking to me and you're right now you're channeling and you're like, okay, I want to, right now, like, let's say I'm your client, then is it my spirit guides or my guides that are coming to you? Is it like whoever's there? Is it like certain angels? Is it God source? Is it just kind of like floating travelers, or is it like
Mhm.
your higher guides?
That's a great question, and it's going to be different for every session, for every person. So you can
Yeah.
have one session where we're going to really access a particular guide, maybe one that you're familiar with, maybe one that you've never, connected with. It could be tuning into your divine template, so it would really be more looking at you on a soul level. Um, it could be so many things.
Yeah.
And it's going to be what comes through is really going to be informed by um, what your divine plan is that's unfolding, that is helpful information for you to know right now. And I've noticed a lot of mediumship. like you said, it's sort of like, hey, now that you're open, you
Yeah.
know? So there is a lot of that. Um, the particular way that I channel and the way that well, let me reverse that. The way that my template works, and therefore the way that I channel, is for a very specific purpose. So I was told early on that I have sort of a shield that I never really need to worry about having interference.
Yeah.
Um, and so as I started teaching channeling, I really had to learn how to help people who have a lot of interference, and because everybody's channeling in a different way, we all have such unique experiences with that. But to kind of bring it back, it's just going to be moment to moment, session by session.
Right. Yeah. And when you first started channeling, what were the themes of the messages that were coming through? For example, when you were channeling and your husband was there and note taking meeting notes,
Yeah.
what kind of information was coming through for you?
Oh, we looked everywhere. We looked at everything. I was so excited. I was like a kid in like a mall-sized candy store. I
Yeah.
was like, I have so many questions. And it was mostly Star Family, ET contact, um, very much exploring what was out there. All I wanted to know was about, the different collectives. Where was I from? What was my purpose here? And I would also look at some kind of like what we would call like trivial life stuff. I'd look at like, um, what does this particular relationship mean? Or how can I, navigate this situation and things like that. I mean, I looked at everything, but I was the most interested in, um, I would say, things to do with cosmic awareness and multidimensional awareness. Um, I've always been really interested in time and the way that time functions in different dimensional spaces and the way that we experience it here. And so that's been really throughout my whole channeling time is time has been a big thing. So kind of those two themes. I married someone who so this is my first lifetime as a human. My soul has had this one experience, and the person that I married, I remember I had no concept of this, but I remember channeling that he had had thousands of lifetimes, and I was like, I literally said, "What have you been doing here?" With a couple explicatives in there. I was like, "What have you been doing here this whole time?" Um, so with that combination, with all of his experiences, being a yogi and a sadhu I mean, he'd done so many things. So we dove into everything. I mean, it's been a fascinating journey, and it's really taken a shift in recent years to and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I like to tell people my whole awakening journey, it's been all about channeling, yes, but it's also been about grounding and learning how to be a human. That has been from the beginning of my awakening. I actually have been going into the human experience. And a lot of people, it's like, whoa, we're going to explore all that. That felt normal to me and safe. That felt great to me. The human experience is really what I've been learning. And I would say in the past 2 or 3 years, I've really been focusing on connecting to the earth. Um, my next book is uh, very much a marriage of spirit and earth. It's going to be about the return to the Garden of Eden. And for that, I have been working with plant medicines, and I've been, diving deep into the way that the human experience works so that I can really deliver those spiritual technologies in a way that we can actually use here as a human. So yeah, that's a little bit of a tangent, but channeling has shifted throughout the whole time that I've been doing it.
This is a big question, but what is either the most or What are some of the most surprising things that you have channeled and learned?
Oh, so good. I remember one of my favorite channeling experiences was I connected with a group of Greys, ETs, and I saw them and I felt their energetic frequency, and it was so different than a human template. Um, and we were having this conversation, and they were very they were very serious, and it made me laugh so hard because they were so serious. It kind of actually just communicating with them sort of tickled my solar plexus. And I remember when I started laughing and I was like, oh, their frequency tickles me, the frequency of my laughter actually hurt them, and they sort of winced with it, like, oh. And I was like, oh, how interesting. Their frequency is tickling me, but my frequency is like, ugh, and through that I learned that laughter is actually pretty unique to the human experience. There are other beings in other dimensional spaces that have evolved and function so completely differently. And, I've actually learned a lot about how being human is so powerful and so unique, that this is a place of mastery, that literally no one incarnates here without a very high level of mastery. We might look at people and go, I really don't like this term, the non-player, whatever.
Yeah, non-essential player.
It's not true.
Yeah.
It's not true. I understand, sometimes we just have a little bit of our light coming into this human experience, and we're really not ignited with a huge amount of soul energy coming through. But that's for a purpose. And every single being who is incarnated has to, it's almost like we have to do a huge amount of strength training to even be able to come into this density layer. And so we're all high level masters here, whether we're operating as that or not, because it's just such a powerful, unique frequency to exist in. Um, anyway, I don't remember what the
No,
question.
you answered it. It was basically what's the most surprising thing or surprising things that you've learned.
Yeah.
And that is so interesting too. I was thinking, oh my God, there's so many idiots in this world that like like I don't mean intelligence
Oh,
wise, but like obviously you would not know to look at a lot of us that we are these soul light beings because once we're stuffed into these bodies, we have free will, we have limitations, we have trauma, indoctrination,
uh,
uh, all of the things that sort of I don't want to say ruin us, but I do want to say ruin us. That kind
yeah.
of ruin a lot of people and their potential. And it doesn't mean that some people can't come out of that and grow. And some people maybe never will, and that's just their path that they have to walk. And that's the disparity is also the contrast, right?
Uh,
And my question that leads me to my question is what are we doing here in
mm,
this dimension on this earth?
okay, pause. I did get a low battery notice. Can I plug that in?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to throw
Hmm.
off. Let's see. I have too many things plugged in here. So we'll see if I can get this.
Yeah, no worries. I'll just edit this part out.
Okay. I'm going to have to literally scoot the whole thing forward. Just a moment.
Yeah, go for it. I'm just holding up my hand so I know where to edit.
Okay.
This is my way of marking it.
Okay. Oh my goodness. I have my cords all over the place here.
So do I. They're in a big jumble. Okay.
Let's scoot this back. It's going to be funny.
Yeah, just
Is that okay?
yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Let's see, what did I ask you? What did I ask you? Oh yeah. My
What are we
question
doing?
was, what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm. You know what? I kind of want to tune in and give a really
I
clear
would love that if you don't mind. Yeah.
having fun. And I know that people are going to hear that and think, I'm not having fun. Our souls are having fun. Our higher selves are having fun. It is an absolutely fascinating process to be a human. And there's so much compassion for how difficult it is. There's so much compassion for that. That being said, it is absolutely fun um, from a higher self perspective, from an oversoul perspective. It is endlessly fascinating and beautiful. And because the perception of duality is it's known, but it's not necessarily lived in. When we live in it, that's when we experience the pain and we feel that one moment and we feel it isolated. And so we know pain. But multidimensionally speaking, from our higher, much higher perspective, pain is part of the full picture. It's not an isolated experience. And so pain is not experienced as pain, it's experienced as part of the full beauty. And it is incredibly beautiful. So, what we're doing here actually has a lot to do with what we choose and what we consciously navigate toward. We are going to have a vast array of experiences, whether we are quote unquote good or some other conception of the way that we are. That being said, we can choose to navigate toward what feels good, what the experience of goodness is. Now, again, from a human perspective, we interpret this as I'm going to navigate toward what feels good externally, what looks good, what serves the ego, what is easy. Truly, this understanding and this concept of navigating toward what is good to have a consciously good life is to really let go of that attachment, those attachments of the ego, and be in the presence of what is and learn to witness its beauty. Inherent beauty exists in all things. All things are inherently beautiful. Because everything is isolated and fragmented here, we perceive it differently. So we are learning to have isolated experiences and still perceive them from that holistic visioning perspective. We are learning how to love all the multiple fragments of God, which is to love all that is in existence, including other incarnated beings. To know ourselves through divine love is to be able to love all all that is, including other incarnated beings. So we have these beautiful experiences of encountering the face of God in others, encountering the face of God in experiences, encountering the face of God within ourselves in multiple ways, because the self is not an isolated thing. It is depth and breadth of experience, of energy, of of the all from a unique soul perspective. So we are learning, we are experimenting, we are playing, we are having fun, and we can experience this even from a human perspective. We can attune to this knowing. And ideally, one, knowing that we have this power to attune to this experience of beauty, and two, to choose it, to know that we have it and to choose it. And of course, as we talked about at the beginning of this, we could simply incarnate, and that would be a powerful experience all to itself. But isn't it lovely to be so powerful, to choose good, and to choose consciously existing in the good, and to choose love, and to choose the experience of seeing God in all things and in all beings and in all experiences, and to choose to see God in all of it is our it is our highest calling. It is our awakening. It is our ascension. And it also just makes it feel a lot more fun and freeing and good. Mhm. That felt really good.
Thank you so much for sharing that. All of that really resonated. I think a lot of times we think, well, I've heard I've heard a lot of people say that this is Earth school and where it's helping us evolve. And I do believe that to a degree. And
Yeah,
I had another guest on recently, and he had a near-death experience, and his download was it isn't Earth school. It's
a playground.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
It's because I don't know that we're really always going to evolve by being here. I don't know. We
Mm,
certainly learn, we certainly have experiences and expand our experiences and our insight and our understanding of things, I suppose, that we take back with us when we return home. And also, we have free will not to do that. So we can still be a total jerk in this in this life if we want to. For example, we can not care, we can not choose love,
mm-hmm.
and we're not going to be punished for it. We're just going to go back and reflect upon it.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen it more as gathering colors, and we add to the palette that we create and paint with, and that all beings so we share the palette, right? So I come to Earth and I have this crazy life experience where I'm an awful mean person, but that's added colors to the palette. And now, but what tends to happen is, because love is, we regather with that, and we navigate again towards love. That is the predominant way of being, and it's all part of the palette. So your life experiences actually add to, the one consciousness now has all of this information. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Uh, I ask everyone this. This is a really broad question.
Hmm.
Um, but just if you had if you had to, this was your last day on Earth, and you
Mm.
want, what would you want people to know?
Oh, that's such a huge.
Yeah.
Whew. Hmm. I mean, I think I've talked a lot throughout my days. So if it was my last day on earth, I'd just be hugging my family the whole time.
Yeah.
But if I needed to deliver something to people, it would be play.
Hmm.
It would be play. It would be, don't beat up on yourself, you know,
Yeah.
let go of all of those expectations, let go of all of those attachments and those needs for it to be a certain way, and just look at the miraculous experience of being alive. Just do that. Just do that.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we naturally gravitate towards that highest love. We really do.
Yeah. I think once I started to do the work that I'm doing now, the spiritual work, that's how I suddenly just have I live like life like it's a playground. Like I want to
Yes.
do all the things. I want to have all I keep saying yes to all these things and wanting to have all these experiences and um also just being middle-aged, you start to be like,
Yeah.
I don't there's so many things I want to do and if only I had known when I was
Mm.
younger what I know now, I could have been freer and I feel like I didn't waste that time because those were my learning years, but also I did, in a sense, waste a lot of precious time in low self esteem, in a lack of self love, in
Yeah.
depression, in addiction, in things that were not serving me. But without those, I wouldn't have the contrast to appreciate
Yeah.
this. So I guess that's part of play. Playing is
Yes.
also messing up and also yeah making mistakes and not doing things quote unquote the right way but making all those mistakes also helps you get to a wiser place so
Absolutely. I think that's why we incarnate as billions of different beings, and our own unique soul journey has many lifetimes sometimes
yeah
just on Earth because, man, there's a lot of cool stuff going on.
yeah and one of your books actually not I want you to just can you share the two books that are published and ready one of them is helping other teaching other people how to channel which is really
Yes.
exciting and it's
Yes.
very affordable which is nice and can you talk about those two books and also just services you have anything you have coming up that you'd like to share
Absolutely. So, the most recently published is called the Learn to Channel Workbook. This is based on the channeling course that I have, which I've been teaching for about 8 years now,
wow
which is
that's
wild.
awesome
And then I turned it into a workbook. So everything that's in that course is in this workbook, and you can do it at your own pace. I also have two other books. So that's a workbook. That's why I call that one's the half one.
oh right that's
Yes. I have two channeled books. The last one is called Ecstatic Playground. Um, it is understanding how to. So, the first book is The Era of the True Creator. And that is okay, we go through an awakening, and how do we start to release our attachment to duality and start to navigate without the dramatic paradigm of right versus wrong? And how do we start to really navigate with choice and with freedom? Through the awakening. So then the second book is Ecstatic Playground. And it's okay, we've practiced this non-duality game for a while. How do we play? How do we play as masterful creators? And there's a lot in there about why we don't play. I say in the beginning of this book that I actually reached such a low point in right before this book was published. I reached such a low point that I wanted to end my own life. And this is post awakening, right? So, what I learned is that in living, so I channel this information and then I live the experience, and then that's when it becomes a book. I can't write the book until I've lived it. And what I discovered in living this life of learning how to play as a masterful creator is I learned why we don't play. All of those limitations to our own freedom, the self-worth, the fear, the um, just all of those things. And so I talk about that in the book. So it's not just, okay, here's how you, oops, sorry. So it's not just a book about here's how you do a cartwheel, it's play is, as you said earlier, it's such a broad topic. Everything that we do is play. The goal is to become conscious and have fun with it. So that was Ecstatic Playground's my most recent book.
that's exciting we'll have a link to your website which is where you can find all of your services and your books and more about you. And I just want to thank you so much for connecting with me, which we will stay connected, but also for taking the time to share your insights, your messages, your experience with the collective, with all of us, because that is the mission of the podcast is to share this information so that we feel more connected. We feel less fear around death, which I think is really the root of all
Mm. Fear. Yeah.
Yeah, if evil, I want to say the root of all evil is fear, and
Mhm.
we're all in a lot of fear a lot of the time. And so I'm really hoping that by presenting people like you, that there will be comfort and hope and
Mhm.
inspiration, and that we will remember who we are. We will be kinder to each other. We will be more compassionate towards one another. And, we can't really individually create world peace, but I hope that just one listener at a time, that people hear something that helps them move forward with less fear and more
Absolutely.
love. So thank you again, Allison Holly, for being here. So lovely to be with you.